On today's episode of Locked On Canadiens, the Habs have signed Joe Veleno. Who is Joe Veleno? Plus, the schedule's out and we've got plenty of mailbag questions.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens. We want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Laura Sab, also known as the Active Stick. You might know my work from Habs Eyes on the Prize back in the day, as well as Hockey Primetime on SiriusXM. I was the producer of that show, and you will know my co-host from Rabbit Habs or the excellent The Build podcast. However, he is now on this show, so we kind of stole him, and that show is in a long-term hiatus, we're going to call it. Ian Boisvert, how are you doing?
Doing all right. It's the end of another week. I think I keep mentioning this. We are 1 week closer to hockey again, which is great.
Yes.
We're the only hockey we get right now is apparently Connor McDavid stepping onto the ice for a beer league game in Newmarket, Ontario, which, by the way, just as an aside, that is a crazy thing to do for a player who is the most valuable player in the entire sport. You don't need some beer league hero attacking Connor McDavid on a random Wednesday night. That maybe I'm a fuddy duddy. Maybe I'm like, I'm just, a buzzkill. If any Montreal Canadian was showing up at a beer league game, I'm losing my mind. That cannot happen.
Honestly, I think it's great. I think if you're like just standing around, like getting ready to play, and then the biggest star in the NHL shows up, I'm all for it. I think it's really exciting. Not good for him, but good for the other players on the ice.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
Exciting, right?
Yeah.
Exciting. All right. You said, every week is 1 week closer to hockey, and this week the schedule was released. We're going to talk about that in our second segment. We also have a mailbag question related to it. We also have a couple of other mailbag questions. But first, let's talk about the Montreal Canadiens signing Joe Veleno. So, Ian, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. We weren't sure the Canadiens should be interested. This signing for me, and I'm going to be really honest, it doesn't have me underwhelmed or overwhelmed. It doesn't have me any kind of whelmed. I'm not whelmed. I'm just, this is a thing.
Yeah, maybe you're properly whelmed. If you're not overwhelmed or underwhelmed, you are just whelmed, right? You're right.
I'm whelmed.
It's Goldilocks. It's right in the middle. Yeah, I mean, look, we talked about Joe Veleno, towards the opening of free agency, towards, right after the dust settled, who's left? And Joe Veleno was one of those names. He was skating with the Canadiens. He's from the area. It always kind of made sense. The Canadiens need center depth. They need a left-handed shot center. Hey, Joe Veleno's both of those things. He's very fast. I think he's going to fit in well, potentially on a line, between Josh Anderson and Brendan Gallagher, filling that space, providing that speed, that forechecking. I don't know what else you're getting out of him. The offensive numbers haven't been there since he started in the NHL. He's 25, so you're getting to that point where you kind of just are what you are. And he hasn't shown that offensive punch. But that said, it's $900,000 for a year. He's an RFA at the end of it, so you still control his rights, even though he does have arbitration rights at the end of it. If you decide to waive him, I can't imagine somebody's claiming him. He's going to go to the AHL, and the $900,000 that you're paying him is entirely variable under the salary cap. So it wouldn't even count towards the Canadiens cap if they were to send him down. This is as low risk as it can get. The reward isn't very high either. I just don't think that there's much here for this player. But it gives the Canadiens another center option that's left-handed in case Alex Newhook can't do it. Veleno's numbers at the faceoff dot aren't great, so Mark Bureau has his work cut out for him in training camp to turn these guys into regular faceoff winners. I'm right there with you, properly whelmed with this signing. It makes sense. They didn't commit to this player for an extended period of time. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And our good friend Randy Hansen saw quite a bit of him in juniors, and said that he thinks that this coaching staff can get a little bit more out of him than what they got in Seattle or what they were able to do in Seattle. So, I mean, that to me is a positive. I think the Montreal Canadiens do have an opportunity here to do another reclamation project, but it's just that if we're expecting sparks or bells and whistles, that's not what we're getting with this player. That's my expectation. Is he's going to be there and he's probably not going to annoy us, but I don't know that we're going to be excited about him every night.
No, I agree. I think he's a player that, he's going to fill a role on this team. I don't really know what that role is yet. Is he a Heineman type replacement? Like if they use him on the wing, he has no penalty kill experience, no significant penalty kill experience in his career. So it's not a Dvorak replacement. He's also not great at the faceoff. So it's not a Dvorak replacement in that respect either. I wonder how much of this the Canadiens are trying to do by committee. I'm wondering, they worked on Alex Newhook using his speed for defense last year. I'm wondering if he's their option on the penalty kill, because if you're Alex Newhook, you're probably trying to find a way to stay on this team, because there's no more room in the top six for a player like him, and you're going to need to find a way to diversify your game and make you inexpendable, right? The penalty kill is a way he could do that. The
Yeah,
same we talked about with Arbor Xhekaj and Jaden Struble. If one of you guys steals a penalty kill job, congrats, you're a Montreal Canadian for a while,
yeah,
because that's a need. So
yeah, yeah.
Veleno can do that too if they somehow try to use him. Hey, congrats, that's your role now. You stole it.
Exactly. And so, this kind of the only thing about this really that had me puzzled was the Canadians always seem to have a plan, and they seem to have a very calculated plan, right? Just from like the first moment of the NHL draft in 2022, they picked the winger. And then a few picks later, they traded and got a center. And they said they've solved, they went for both of their the roster holes that they needed, right? Like they didn't walk away with only one first round forward. And so it always seems calculated, it always seems planned. And so to me, when I'm looking at this Veleno signing, it doesn't scream plan in any way, right? Like it doesn't, like, we don't even know where they're going to put him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really, like, the dominoes are not falling, if that makes sense. So that's really the only thing that has me puzzled. The other thing was Scott kind of brought it up that like he could be a Barre Boulay replacement, but it does seem like they are getting him for the NHL. So one positive thing about this signing is if you've been listening to the show for any amount of time, you will know that we love our bits on the show. And we had a running bit, which could have an expiry date, we don't know, of Mike Matheson. And we had a Mike Matheson meter, a Mike meter. And it was the spectrum was tragic Mike to magic Mike. And whenever there was anything of significance that happened in a game, we would rate Mike on that scale. And so, as our wonderful listener, Rally Cap Andy pointed out, and as Ian also pointed out early on the show, this gives us an opportunity for another bit, and that bit is Joe Veleno or Joe Velez, right? So if you like lame bits, make sure you listen to our last episode too. We had a lot of fun doing that one. But yes, this is the positive. I think this is the positive aspect of the Joe Veleno signing. Until further notice, right? He could just have an amazing season here. We don't know.
Yeah, it's we're always looking out for ourselves here on Locked On Canadiens. We're trying to figure out how we can create content out of something like this. And I do want to mention, before we started recording, I mentioned this to Laura, not knowing that Andy had mentioned it to Laura already, which I think is the greatest compliment we could receive as a show, is people are already deciding what our bits are going to be. And I also thought the same bit and had not expressed it to anyone. So hats off to you, Andy, for being in my walls apparently and knowing exactly what I'm thinking before I even think it. Keep sending us your bits, because apparently they're pretty good. We know that now.
And we absolutely adore our listeners. So if you're new here, please stick around. We definitely want this to be your show. We want you guys to shape the content. But in the meantime, the this week the NHL schedule was finally released. I mean, they told us it was going to be July 16th, but for some reason, every single day I was disappointed that it wasn't there. So we're going to talk about some games to watch out for, but also we've got our mailbag question. We've got some mailbag questions about the NHL schedule, and we'll get right into our mailbag as part of that. And that's coming up next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. And that's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last minute deals. And honestly, like it's so inefficient. You get your friend to log on, you get your mother to log on, everybody's sitting there trying to get a spot in the line to get tickets. Game Time is going to take all of that stress away. And with Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. There's no hidden fees. And if you have plans that change, the Game Time guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. One of my favorite things is you get a panoramic seat view so you know what it's going to look like before you buy your ticket. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. So, in big news, the NHL schedule is out. And the first thing that I will say was that I was very relieved to see that the schedule had a little bit more standardization in it. This time around, I think last year we had a little bit of a hard time because our expectation was always, or not always, most weeks that we would have a Tuesday game, a Thursday game, and a Saturday game. And obviously, with the Prime deal coming in and all kinds of other factors, the schedule was a little bit all over the place. So I feel like it was like really hard, not just for us as podcasters, but just everybody, all Habs fans, to get into their routine. So the first thing I will say is that was a huge relief to see that it was just it's not universal, but there were so many more weeks with that Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday game schedule. I love that.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it seems like ancient history now, but I still get very excited that we are at 7 o'clock home starts.
Yeah.
Because like most of the time with that 7 o'clock home start, puck isn't dropping until 7:20 anyway. Like 7:30 home starts were practically 8 o'clock home starts by the time, especially if it was a two anthem game, it's over.
Yeah.
Like we're not starting this game for a while. So I'm glad that they've gone back to that. I think across the league, generally, most games are 7 o'clock local time starts, which I think is just good for uniformity across the league and making sure that people can see the games and expect the games to be on at a certain time. Speaking of that, I believe the NHL is doing their Frozen Frenzy again, where all 32 teams are playing on the same day with staggered start times. And I believe that's on October 28th. Montreal will be in Seattle for that at 10:30. So that will be one of the last games to kick off of the Frozen Frenzy, which is actually kind of nice if you're a Canadiens fan, because you get to watch all the rest of it. Yeah. You know, like it's like you get to take in the NFL Red Zone and then watch your team play on Sunday Night Football. Like that's sort of what it's going to feel like on that day. I just wish the NHL did more of those. Honestly, they're kind of cool events. They need to do that.
We say that's a Saturday.
Yeah, no, it's a Tuesday. So, so I think the reason for that, and I think people need to understand the media landscape that the NHL exists in. Saturday in the fall belongs to college football in the States. Sunday belongs to the NFL. Friday night belongs to college football in the States. So like you don't really have the NHL has to find their own way to do this. I believe TNT owns the Wednesday night rights. So this is on ESPN. It had to be a Tuesday. It wasn't going to be Monday going up against Monday Night Football. We have to remember that the NHL is still fourth fiddle when it comes to all of these other leagues. So it is what it is. But yeah, I agree with you. It would be much nicer if we could just all plop on the couch for a Saturday and watch hockey start to finish, like Hockey Day in Canada, right? Like you're just back to back to back in 3 games.
Yes. I also want to put out a call to the listeners. Please select our Locked On Canadiens Extended Universe reunion game. We had a wonderful time in Buffalo earlier this year watching the game together. It was Scott and his partner, Ian and his partner, and just me, all in Buffalo.
And the Roberts brothers.
And the Roberts brothers. I was going to get to that actually. And we had a really good time. And because it was in Buffalo, there were a lot of Habs fans from close by driving in to make the game, and we had a really good time doing the power of friendship with the Roberts brothers. So that was really a highlight. We love to meet you guys. So send out suggestions as to what game should be our Locked On Canadiens game. And honestly, if we have enough lead time, we might make it an event and maybe, get together at a bar or something so people can come and meet us. And just let us know. Send us emails, leave it in the comments. What are the marquee games we should endeavor to see each other on? There's a couple of blackout dates. Late October is not a good time. And then I believe late October for you as well, Ian, is not a good time. And the last couple of weeks of March are not a good time for me. So either just let us know and we will go from there. Anyways,
don't make it be Philadelphia, because when we did it last time, Christian Dvorak had a 2-point game. So we need to avoid Christian Dvorak. We cannot see him now. Yes. If he was still wearing our jersey, sure. But we need to avoid Christian Dvorak for the time being.
Yes, and also Scott has like a really bad experience with the Flyers game in which nothing happened. Then no scoring, nothing happened, and then like the Flyers won in overtime. Not so great. And also bonus points if you can get either a Laval game or a Victoire game in the same weekend. We're open to suggestions. Let us know, and also like come hang out. All right, so we have a listener question specifically about the schedule, and this comes to us from somebody who's rediscovering hockey. And I will start with, we got a couple questions. So this is from Brent. So, hi, Laura and Ian. Looking ahead to next season, I'm hoping to get to a game at the Bell Center with my child. But with ticket prices being what they are, I can probably only afford a game or two at most. If you had to choose just one game to see in person next season, do you have any thoughts on a specific game you would choose? A team you would want to see, an opposing player, and a bobblehead you would hope to collect? Perhaps we can set aside the major rivalries, Toronto, Ottawa, and Boston, as those are obviously desirable and often pricier games. I have a hot take about that in a second. And then thank you again. We really appreciate the kind words. Also, this past season, I chose the game against the Wild, thinking it would be great to see Kaprizov in action. Sadly, Kaprizov was injured when the game came around, but it ended up being Marc-Andre Fleury's final game in Montreal, which was an interesting experience. The Habs played terribly, but the crowd was all in on celebrating Fleury. It was genuinely moving, but it also felt very strange to be in the building as the crowd kept chanting for the opposing goalie. We love our hometown guys here. So my hot take is it's not just that they're expensive. The Toronto, Boston, and Ottawa games are no longer enjoyable. They used to be my favorite thing ever, but because of all of the sideshows and the shenanigans that we get, and it starts from the fans and it goes into the media, I don't care if it spills into the players, like that's fine. It's just, it becomes so impossible to really just enjoy the game. So I find that those games are really not worth it. If you're going to ask me, sorry, it's still going to cost a lot. I would want to see Florida. That's the team I would want to see. I would also look to see when the Sharks are coming in town because Celebrini is electric and I love watching him play. For me, those are the two big ones I would try for. And usually Sharks games are still cheap because they're not a very good team. So before they become good, take advantage of that.
I have two things. I'll start with the game that I would pick if I was somebody trying to go to a Canadiens game this year. December 20th at home, Saturday night, 7 p.m. start, the Pittsburgh Penguins. That is a job for you as a fan. That is going to be a game where you can try to convince Sidney Crosby he needs to be a Montreal Canadian. Like, that is a moment where you can get loud and make him feel like, it'd be pretty cool to play here. So that's an obligation if you are a Canadiens fan to make that game a turning point in that man's career. I also want to talk about the ticket pricing aspect of this. The original 6 is a scam. It's not real. It was made up. You might have seen sometimes I have a shirt on that says the original 1. The Canadiens are the only original franchise in the National Hockey League. All of the other ones are just the first 6 teams that didn't disband. Toronto's not original. They're not even the original Toronto team. Chicago's not original. Detroit, the Red Wings were in a bunch of different places before they ended up in Detroit. None of it's real. It is a way to charge more for these kinds of games. It's not the reason it exists. It exists because the NHL has this weird fantasy about like heritage and legacy. So they've created this. Do you recognize that no other sport does this? No other sport has like, we have an original. No, it's made up. And it's made up so that when Montreal goes into Minnesota, they can charge 3 times as much for tickets. And when Montreal goes into Anaheim, they can charge 3 times as much for tickets. They always end up being marquee games in other markets. It's a scam. Don't fall for it. That is, I got in a lot of trouble on Twitter back in the day by saying the original 6 isn't real because people were like, "What are you talking about?" This is what I'm talking about. It's not real. It's made up for money. Get over it. Yes. Anyway, have fun at that Pittsburgh game. Get Crosby to come to Montreal. Thank you.
Yes. Take a sign. And on that note, we do have some more mailbag questions, and those are coming right up next. All right. So this comes from the same listener, and this is why I said, he was rediscovering hockey. Hi, Laura and Ian. As a fan returning to watching hockey after a long hiatus, I found your podcast as well as Locked On NHL very helpful in getting reoriented as a new Habs fan and returning hockey fan. I know you've mentioned some other podcasts on your show, most notably Game Over, which I still have to check out. I've also heard that Ken Dryden's The Game is Essential Reading, which I plan to get to soon. Do you have any other recommendations, either specific to the Habs or to the NHL in general, books, social media accounts, or news sites? So the first thing I'm going to tell you is that the gold standards of hockey reporting in my mind right now, or Habs reporting in my mind, are Arpon Basu and Marc-Antoine Gaudin. They also have a podcast, so I would try and, especially if you speak French, Marc-Antoine Gaudin's work is impeccable. I do see it translated in some places. It used to be much more when he was at The Athletic, but now he's with, I believe, Radio-Canada. Right. Either way, all his work, honestly, for my money, he's the best hockey writer out there, and Arpon Basu obviously as well. So those are really the gold standards. A lot of what I also consume is podcasts, like most notably, obviously, Game Over, are good friends. Ian and I both listen to the Habs cast. They've been hit or miss with their schedule recently, but we really enjoy it. And then I had a whole list that I was... If you speak French, Briser la Glace is a great prospect podcast. If you do not, then honestly, there are a few hockey prospect and EP, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the guys that I think is required viewing for every new hockey fan, and honestly everyone else that's stuck around, the Hockey Guy on YouTube. Nobody loves hockey as much as Shannon, the guy who runs that channel. You need to be watching the Hockey Guy, and it's great for a new person to jump in because he's so in depth and he does so much research into the things he's talking about that you will leave feeling like you have a better understanding of where the state of the league is. So definitely check out the Hockey Guy. But yes, co-signed on everything you had said. Marc-Antoine and Arpon Basu have their own podcast, the Basu and Gaudin Notebook. Would check that out. They do 2 episodes a week. One is behind a paywall, the other is not. So you can choose your own adventure there. I personally am part of that paywall. I am part of their Substack to get into that. So there's lots of great stuff. We appreciate you coming to us, by the way. We hope that we're able to help you understand things and maybe make you laugh along the way. That's kind of the whole goal of this show. So thanks for choosing us. And in the comments, everybody else, put your stuff down there. Things that you wanna endorse.
Yes, definitely. There's a couple more things. A book, one book that I think for me really, really opened my eyes to how the game really works. It is a little bit older now. It's called Money Players. It's definitely, there's a little bit of insight as to how the salary cap got the way it is, how kind of some inside information on how the NHL teams make their decisions at draft day, things like that. So it's definitely, I found it to be very, very eye-opening. And then obviously The Game is a good one to read. And I think that if you want something that's bite-sized, Mike Comito's books are great because they give you basically a fact of the day about the Habs. So definitely check out Mike Comito's work as well. It's really accessible, really bite-sized, just, definitely something that I really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff.
All right. So for our next mailbag, so we've got a challenge which we are going to we can't do it right now because we didn't have enough lead time to do the prep work. But I think it's really interesting. Create your all-time Habs team, a starting lineup including a goalie, if you will. No problem, right? But here's the rub. All the players have to have been born and raised in Montreal proper, not Longueuil, not Pointe Claire, not Dorval. This is for both hosts to have their own team. No blending forwards, each a distinct position. Good luck with this, although this team will still be killer. So first of all, we're going to have to establish what's Montreal proper, right? Because there was a merger and then a demerger. So let's establish those parameters, and then we're going to start. We'll do like a draft again.
I was going to say, let's do another draft, right? Where
Yes.
we'll create a roster and we'll see who picks the better team. I think that's the best way to go with that. So thank you for that. That'll be fun.
Yeah. So thanks, Bill, for that idea. This is for an upcoming mailbag. And then we've got a question from John. With all the Crosby talk, what is a realistic package to acquire him other than Struble and a 2029 second round pick? This is like the Ryder Halak in a second.
I was going to say Ryder Halak in a second just as a bit. So yeah, thank you for jumping the gun on that one. I really struggle with this because like we're talking about trading for one of the greatest players the game has ever seen. And yes, he's not at his peak, but he's still like point per game player at this point, where like it's not even unfathomable to think that in his early 40s he's still going to be very good. I would imagine they'd want a piece like Kirby Dach back, right? That just the promise that they'd have in that player. I imagine, they would have their pick of any of the, prospect defenseman not named David Reinbacher. I'd imagine maybe they'd even have a shot at a guy like Michael Hage. Tons of picks would have to be thrown in that deal. That's where my mind goes. But then I'm wondering, like, if Crosby's being traded, he's picking the team he's going to. It doesn't really give Pittsburgh a ton of leverage. They're kind of just doing the player a solid at that point. So I'm curious to see how that would play out. If you're Pittsburgh, like you're not winning that trade, whether it's Montreal or elsewhere. Like you're taking an L on that and telling everybody Gavin McKenna is going to be the next Sidney Crosby. We just have to live with that. So that it's not that I don't think Crosby will be traded. I just have a hard time wrapping my mind around how a general manager can get to a point where they're like, yeah, we're actually going to move him. Or we still don't know what Sidney Crosby feels about this. He's only said publicly he doesn't want to go anywhere.
He wants
what
to
he
retire,
says
a Penguin.
Yeah, what he says behind, I mean, he's never going to come out and say, yeah, trade me. Like, so that argument's kind of silly. But we also can't extrapolate anything that's not there. So we kind of just have to assume that he's a Penguin until further notice.
I think the biggest thing with Sidney Crosby is that there will be a time, if he's inclined to leave Pittsburgh, there will be a time where he will go to the general manager and say, I want a shot at another cup before I retire.
Yep.
So in that case, Montreal's a couple years away, a few years away. Florida's getting him. No, they haven't said.
Yeah, the cap every couple years there's a team where the cap just doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
It was Chicago, it was Tampa. It's the Florida Panthers. They're not there yet because they are like very cap compliant. They're a great team who's just managed it well, but they have a move like that in them still.
Yeah.
Where they add a guy where you're like, how did you do that? Like, where's the money coming from?
Absolutely. All right. We've got a couple questions from our good friend Andy, obviously. So the questions were about Joe Veleno. Will he start the year in Montreal and will he score more than 5 goals?
I think he starts in Montreal. I think he scores more than 5 goals. I think he'll be
like
playing
6?
with. I'll give him 10.
Okay.
I think that he'll be playing with more talented players in Montreal than he was towards the bottom of the lineup on the Chicago Blackhawks, right? Like I think just by virtue of him stepping onto a better team or a team in a better situation, he's going to be putting himself in a better situation. I think the Canadiens value speed. They want guys who can move north-south quickly. It's why they paid a premium for a guy like Alex Newhook. I think that there's a chance for him to sort of become a 10 and 10 guy, 10 and 15 guy, like 25 points. It's not lighting the world on fire, but I don't think he's a Laval player. I think he's in Montreal. I think if anybody is headed to Laval, it's Sammy Blais.
Yeah. All right. We want to thank our listeners for your questions. But before we get out of here, we've got trivia.
We do. Yesterday's question, we talked about Nazem Kadri and the Calgary Flames, but we also did our Martyisms draft on Wednesday. So the Calgary Flames exposed Marty St. Louis in the 2000 expansion draft that saw Columbus and Minnesota pick their first rosters. St. Louis was not picked. He was bought out in Calgary and became a free agent. He then signed in Tampa, and the rest is history. The Wild picked 2 players from the Flames in that expansion draft, and not Marty St. Louis. Who were they? The answers to this one were Sergei Krivokrasov and Philip Kuba. Philip Kuba is a guy. Like that was he played 818 games after this draft. So they got a good player in Kuba. Not so much for Krivokrasov. Played 80 games after the draft in the NHL. The only correct answer came from Jeff Harpel, who also pointed out that Krivokrasov had 16 points with the Wild in 2 seasons. Philip Kuba had 132 points with the Wild in 6 seasons. And Marty St. Louis, with Tampa between 2000 and 2006, scored 300 points. So more than both those guys combined. So yeah, thanks, Jeff, for playing along and having the correct answer and letting us tell everybody how smart you are. Today's question, it's in honor of Joe Veleno joining the Montreal Canadiens. In Joe Veleno's final season in junior, he played in Drummondville with this Habs 6th round pick. Who was on that final junior season team with Joe Veleno in Drummondville? If you have the answer, put it in the comments down below. Let us know how smart you are, and we will shout you out on the next episode of this show.
You heard the man. So you can get in touch with us a number of ways. We are at lockedoncanadians at gmail.com. So definitely you can send us mailbag questions as well as your trivia guesses there. You can also leave them in the YouTube comments. We are also on social media at Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. We're Locked On Canadians on all of those places. So definitely you can hit us up there. You can send us a DM. You can leave a comment. You can answer the trivia question, but also send us mailbag questions. We've got a quick programming note. I am on vacation next week, but Ian will be here with guests and lots of fun stuff going on. And then we will be back I will be back the following week. We'll both be here. So please look out for that. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Follow us on social media. Ian's at Maybe It's Ian. I'm at The Active Stick. We want to thank you all so much for listening, and Ian, we'll see you all next Monday.